Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Psychology of Behavior. Thank you so much for your interest in learning about applied behavior analysis. As promised, the upcoming 2 modules aim to give you a basic understanding of the ABA methodology for reducing problem behavior. My name is Robin Bertrand, and I'm a board-certified behavior analyst at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. This is me on the far right, along with my amazing team. Thank you to Jen and Marilyn for setting the stage for the upcoming module. Marilyn introduced you in Module 1 to the topic of ABA, emphasizing that ABA is a science that follows a systematic method, both in research and in practice. In Module 2, Jen introduced the ABCs as the building blocks for understanding exactly how people learn to behave in certain ways and how we continuously adapt our behavior to fit the environment. You'll get to meet Becky and Sarah, my other amazing coworkers, in Module 5 and 6, so stay tuned. Today's module, Behavior Reduction Part 1, will focus on identification and assessment of problem behavior. The next module will explain how that assessment acts as a foundation for developing a treatment plan for reducing that problem behavior. If you are alive, then you behave. And chances are there are aspects of your own behavior that could be improved. I know that I should probably stop going to bed so late and eating sour cream and onion chips, but there is no one putting together a plan to change my bad sleeping or bad eating habits. So how do we know when a behavior analyst should become involved? A while back, I worked with a family, and there was a little boy who engaged in humming behavior. So when he was in his own free time, he would walk around and make a low humming sound that was constant. It drove his mom bananas. I was already working with this family, and they asked me if reducing that humming behavior would be something that would be worthwhile to target. Is that something that I could help them with? Now, there was a few questions I had. One thing I found out is that the little boy only engaged in humming behavior when he wasn't busy with something else. So if he was reading or doing a puzzle, even watching TV, then he wouldn't hum. He just liked it in his own free break time to make that humming sound. And he was a younger kiddo, so he had a fair amount of break time. So the problem behavior wasn't getting in the way of his learning and getting in the way of his other activities. So because of this, it wasn't a behavior that we decided to target. For this particular individual, he enjoyed that behavior and he had other things that were more important for him to learn. So we don't reduce a behavior just because it's annoying to another person. That being said, there were strategies that we could use to help his family. So for example, we taught him when he had his free time to spend it in a different room. So he had an area set up in the basement in his own bedroom, and he could absolutely go there if he wanted to spend some time relaxing and doing those different things or humming that just seemed to be enjoyable for him. Now, that being said, when his parents went out to church or when he went to school, that humming behavior became more of a problem because the teacher didn't want him in class making that noise that might be interfering, for example, if the rest of the students were trying to do a spelling test. Similarly, it could have interrupted the church service. So having his humming behavior occur at those times was getting in the way of him being able to participate in learning. And for those reasons, we became a little bit more interested in teaching him how to change that behavior. So we didn't teach him to get rid of that behavior altogether. We spent some time teaching him what environments it was appropriate for him to have that humming break and what environments he should work at turning off that behavior, taking a break from that behavior so that it wasn't getting in the way. So I tell you this story just to let you know that everybody has different quirks and personality traits, and they actually make people unique. We like that. We're not here to fix our clients or our students. We're here to give them the greatest chance of success. The elements on this slide are a good guide that tell us when a problem behavior becomes worth intervening with. So if it interferes with learning, it results in injury to other or causes damage to the physical environment, if it socially isolates the individual or it gets in the way of their independence. These are indicators that the problem behavior may be worth looking at it from a behavior change perspective. Problem behavior can show up in many forms across different environments and different populations. Some common targets for problem behavior in the ABA literature include, in the autism and developmental disabilities population, behaviors like aggression to others, vocal outbursts, elopement, eating non-edible objects. Elopement means running away from a caregiver. In the student population, things like bullying, skipping school, smoking, vaping, all problem behaviors that have been identified in the student population. In the general population, target behaviors like overeating, gambling, distracted driving, pollution, and we could go on. The area that the focus of my career has been mostly in the autism and developmental disabilities population, and more recently in the student population. So trying to identify and target behaviors that get in the way of students participating in learning or development of skills. So that's the perspective that I come with and the perspective that I share this information with you from. Behavior analysts are detectives in a way. I like to talk about us as detectives because we're searching for clues in the environment that help to explain how a problem behavior is accidentally being reinforced. The detective work is called a functional behavior assessment. To get started, we must know exactly what behavior to look for. Teachers and caregivers sometimes describe behavior using vague language, using words such as angry, rude, disruptive. We kind of know what they mean, but it's hard to agree or disagree when we see examples of those behaviors. To make it more clear, we can ask caregivers and participants and parents to describe exactly what those related behaviors that they're talking about look like. For example, disruptive behavior may be described as speaking out when a teacher is talking or speaking out when a peer is talking, touching other students or touching other students' items on their desks. A clear, observable, and measurable description is termed an operational definition. The operational definition allows us to observe and measure the problem behavior so we know the level of problem behavior that we're starting off with. So this is usually our first step. In Module 2, Jen explained that behavior is learned by experiencing what happens after the behavior, aka the consequence. This is also true for problem behavior. If a problem behavior repeats, it's because in the past, the problem behavior has met a specific need for him or her. The behavior may have helped them get something that they wanted or needed, such as sour cream and onion chips, or the behavior may have helped them to avoid something that they didn't want to happen. Jen introduced the term reinforcement as anything that happens after a behavior as a consequence that increases that behavior in the future. No one sets out to reinforce a problem behavior. It's usually created and maintained by accident, and sometimes I call this accidental reinforcement. Understanding exactly how a problem behavior has been accidentally reinforced will help us to develop a plan that reverses that learning. The technical term for accidental reinforcement is function. So the assessment is called a functional behavior assessment. We will search for clues about behavior function by asking caregivers questions and watching for examples of problem behavior occurring in the natural environment. We are looking at the ABC patterns in the environment to uncover. So what usually happens right before the problem behavior occurs? The antecedent. What usually happens right after the problem behavior? That's the consequence. And what we're looking for is the change that happens between the antecedent and the consequence. So what change in the environment happened because of the problem behavior? And how might that change serve a value to the individual? Could the valuable change be reinforcing the problem behavior and causing the problem behavior to repeat in the future? Evidence shows if we uncover the reinforcement or determine the correct function, our treatment plans work better. Because of this, we sometimes test our theories using controlled experiments. There are four broad categories of reinforcement for problem behavior. The acronym S.E.A.T, S-E-A-T, helps us to remember them. The four functions are sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. We're going to go on to talk about each of these functions and what they mean. Sensory, so S for sensory. Sensory behaviors are simply described as doing something because it feels good or it makes you feel better. So for example, let me look at the examples here. So Sally's driving to Toronto. She's on a long drive. She's kind of bored, and she starts singing along to the songs on the radio. Sally likes the sensation of herself singing. She maybe likes the sound of her own voice, but she's doing it because she likes the way that it feels. So singing when you're alone is probably serving a sensory function. Another example, Donnie has a headache, and who among you, when you have a headache or you reach up to your temples and you might give a massage or squeeze on a different part of your head, and temporarily when you do that, you feel better. So it's taking away a sensation that doesn't feel so great to start off with. So that improvement is an example of a sensory reinforcer. So because that feels good, in the future, I'm more likely to press on massage my temples when I have a headache. Another example, Tevin is waiting at his desk. He rocks back and forth in his chair. So for some people, when they have low stimulation, doing things like twirling their hair or rocking back and forth in their chair might feel good and add some stimulation to their environment. So those are all examples of behaviors and consequences that might be linked to that sensory function. Sensory functions are sort of hard to detect in the environment because the changes are often things that are happening within a person, like they're feelings that, sensations, I'll say rather, that you can't necessarily see. So for sensory behaviors, we look for some clues in the environment, such as these behaviors are likely to occur with regularity across environments, but they occur also when there's no other people present. So they're non-social, meaning that a person can access the reinforcement without help from other people. So when behaviors occur with no one else around, it's a clue that they might have a sensory function. The examples here are not necessarily problem behavior, and I just bring you back to when these are examples of behaviors that might be reinforced by a sensory function, but not necessarily problem behaviors unless they're getting in the way of a person being able to have a good quality of life. Sorry, I've got some messages coming up here. E, so you're remembering the acronym S.E.A.T. So the second one in that acronym is escape. So escape could be classified as escape or avoidance. And these function behaviors are simply described as doing something because it helps the person to get out of something that they do not want, something that they don't want to do, or something that they have that's undesired in their environment that they want to go away. So that might be a task or a person or an object even in their environment. I once had a client who cried and yelled and got really upset anytime there was an animatronic toy. Do you remember those like Tickle Me Elmos? But there's all kinds of different varieties of toys that move and make sounds and dance. So although they're popular with the other kids, they were not popular with this little guy. And he would cry and yell until somebody would take away the toy and bring it outside the room or into the closet, anywhere that he couldn't see it. So because crying and yelling, sometimes we didn't even notice that there was a toy in the environment and that he didn't like or he was afraid of, and he would cry and yell, and that would alert us, hey, there's something here he doesn't like. And most often somebody, a parent or a caregiver, would come and take that toy and go, oh, he doesn't like this, and put it away. So that crying and yelling for him became a method of him communicating that he didn't want that item to be available. So the function of his crying and yelling ended up being escape from the animatronic toys. Animatronic toys. That's a mouthful, my goodness. So let's look at a few other examples using our ABC chart. So Shayla is at the mall with her friends, and she sees her ex walking ahead. So her and her friends move up to the next level of the mall to avoid bumping into their ex. That's maybe something that you can relate to. You might see somebody at the grocery store, maybe it's your ex, maybe it's your teacher, maybe it's your mom, and you sort of slake down a different aisle in the grocery store. It's just not the time that you want to bump into those people. So that's a great example of an avoidance behavior. Um, who's ever sat at a table with a small kiddo? Actually, maybe even an adult who gets handed a plate that has something they don't want on it. So, for example, vegetables, and the kiddo might throw those vegetables on the floor. I remember when I was a kid, I had lots of things I didn't like, and I used to stuff them in my pockets, and then I'd sneak off to the bathroom and flush them down the toilet. Don't tell my parents. I'm not sure if they know that yet. But that was an example of a behavior that I engaged in to escape having to eat that food that I didn't like. A third example is an example of a teacher in class. So John is a student in class, and he's making cracking jokes, and everybody's having fun except the teacher. So the students are laughing and sort of carrying on. The teacher gets upset and actually kicks John out of the class, sends him to the principal's office. Well, from the point of view of the teacher, once that student's gone, the teacher can continue on with their lesson. So sending John to the office functions as an escape or avoidance of John's behavior. So those are just a couple examples of real day-to-day situations where our behavior may adapt based on our ability to manipulate the environment so we can get rid of things that we don't want in our environment. Number 3, attention. Attention function behavior can simply be described as doing something in order to receive social attention from others, social interaction from others. So that could be peers, like your friends at school. It could be teachers, could be your brothers and sisters. It could even be virtual attention, like getting likes or shares or streaks or whatever on social media. Let's look up some examples in our ABC chart. So, teacher is delivering a science lesson and John cracks a joke. So here's John again. This is the same example as before, except from John's perspective. So the teacher's delivering the lesson, John cracks a joke, and then the other students snicker and laugh at the joke. So John continues to engage in that cracking a joke behavior. It's probably because he likes the other kids for laughing and carrying on about that. I'm not sure how John's behavior will change in the future if he got kicked out of class, and that will depend on if getting kicked out of class was a punisher or how that sort of competes with the laughs that he was getting. So there's always sometimes behavior gets different consequences, and it's all about which one of those consequences sort of takes the lead in shaping your behavior. So as long as the friends are still joking, he's at least getting some reinforcement by attention. Another example, Selwa has an Instagram profile. She posts some sexy photos on Instagram, and then she receives 10 requests to follow her on Insta. So if requests are valuable, or if those requests to have somebody subscribe to her account are valuable to her, then that may increase her behavior of posting pictures in the future. Mom is busy cooking dinner, and Mo pinches his brother. So mom leaves her cooking dinner, comes over, gives Mo a reprimand for pinching the brother, and then spends some time having Mo apologize to the brother and maybe get him started on an activity. So that extra attention that he has in the consequence compared to the not very much attention from mom in the antecedent condition, that change, no attention to attention, gives us a clue that attention may be a reinforcer for the problem behavior of pinching. So the more you know and become familiar with these functions, the more you'll see the way that they interplay together in the whole world around us. So finally, the tangible function. The tangible function of behavior is simply described as doing something to get access to a preferred item or activity. Some potential examples in our ABC chart include Ben asks to borrow his dad's truck, and dad says no. Ben complains and goes on about all of the reasons that he needs to. Okay, hang on, my battery is running low. Sorry, guys. Hopefully this. Sorry. Okay, so Ben complains and goes on, and then Dad decides to let Ben use the truck. So because Ben was able to access something super valuable in the consequence condition, but not in the antecedent condition, that behavior of complaining and really maybe showing his case a little bit stronger might be reinforced. So he's more likely to do that in the future if Dad says no. It means that Dad's no maybe doesn't always mean no. Another example, Tim is playing with the iPad. Sue hits Tim. Tim runs away crying, maybe goes to find a caregiver, his babysitter, his teacher. Meanwhile, Sue jumps on and plays the iPad. So you can see that Sue didn't have something to play with. Sue didn't have the iPad until she hit Tim, and then she was able to access the iPad. So that's a pretty classic example of gaining access to a preferred tangible item contingent on a problem behavior. Cheyenne is playing in the basement. Cheyenne crawls out the window and goes to the park. Cheyenne gets to play at the park. So elopement is a problem behavior that is very concerning, especially for young children or people with developmental disabilities. And it's important to look at the reason why elopement happens. So elopement, like I mentioned earlier, is running away from a safe place or from a caregiver, such as Cheyenne running to the park. So when we're treating elopement behavior, what we actually want to know before we start treating it is, why is it happening? So for Cheyenne, if it's happening because she wants to get somewhere, she needs to learn some behaviors that will help her access going to those places or getting those things that she wants in a different way than having that elopement behavior. Other people might show elopement for different reasons. So they might run away because they're afraid of something, or because they don't want something that's in their environment. They hate where they are. And the treatment for that would be different. So that's just a little bit of a preview about how the function of the problem behavior links into the treatment plan. So now that you have an introduction to the 4 functions of problem behavior: sensory, escape, attention, and tangible, let's have some fun trying to uncover the functions of the behaviors observed in these video clips. So let me see if I can get these clips to play.
Lewis, Mom, Mommy, Mama, Ma, Mama. What? Hi.
Just trying to get this to advance. What is the probable function of Stewie's behavior? Sensory, escape, attention, or tangible? What is the probable function of Stewie's behavior? Before Stewie started nagging his mom, he had no attention from her. But after the nagging, she gave him attention by turning to him and saying, "What?" The function of Stewie's behavior is probably attention. Great job. Let's try another one.
You know what makes the itching even worse?
That you don't stop talking about it?
Fine.
Let's just play, okay? Good, okay. Here we go, double sixes. Here we go. Here we go, come to mama. Just getting ready to roll the dice.
What are you doing? Are you scratching?
No, this is what I do for luck, okay?
You're scratching. Give me the dice.
No.
Give me the dice.
No, here, there. Oh, double sixes.
You know what makes the itching even worse?
That you don't stop talking about it?
Fine.
Let's just play, okay? Good, okay. Here we go, double sixes. Here we go. Here we go, come to mama. Just getting ready to roll the dice.
What are you doing? Are you scratching?
No, this is what I do for luck, okay?
You're scratching. Give me the dice.
No.
Give me the dice.
No, here, there. Oh, double sixes.
Sorry about that, playing that twice, guys. I thought that maybe it turned off because I switched the screen. But anyways, it's pretty funny, a little classic episode of Friends. So what do you think the probable function of Phoebe's scratching behavior is? Stop and think. Phoebe was trying to hide herself scratching, which gives us a clue that she would be doing it if no one was around. This is a clue that the behavior might serve a sensory function. We can't observe what Phoebe is feeling, but we can guess that she's scratching the chicken pox because it relieves that itchy sensation. You crushed it. Phoebe's scratching probably serves a sensory function. Let's try another one.
Hey.
Hello?
Jim,
What's up, buddy?
this is not funny. Why is my stuff in here?
Wow, that's weird. Ooh, $1 for a stapler. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'm not paying for my own stuff. Okay, I know you did this because you're friends with the vending machine guy.
Oh, Steve?
Yeah, Steve, whatever his name is.
What do I want? Ooh, pencil cup.
Oh, no. That's my pencil cup.
I don't think so. I just bought it.
I think so, and you're gonna hand it over to me.
I love these.
Okay, fine. My wallet.
Oh, there it is. J1. Here, you know
I
what?
don't have any.
You got some nickels.
What was the function of the behavior that Dwight exhibited? So the buying behavior. Stop and think. Before Dwight began paying the vending machine, he didn't have possession of all of those items. I mean, they were his items, but not anymore. He definitely didn't have possession of them. Also, his motivation to get them back was so high because the other lady came up, sorry, I don't know her name, came up and started buying his items. So his motivation was high to have those tangible items in the vending machine. After putting the money in the machine, he should get the items back that he wants. We didn't see that part. But the function of his paying the machine behavior is probably tangible because his learning history would be you put the money in the machine and the things you choose come out. So the function of that behavior is probably tangible. Nice detective work, guys. We got one more for you. This is a classic Bart Simpson example. Let's give it a watch.
Put away your books, children. It's time for your English test.
Sick on test day. Why? Why?
Bart, have you ever read The Boy Who Cried Wolf?
I'm halfway through it, I swear.
So, Bart, how are you feeling?
Can't complain.
Well, then, you're ready for your makeup test.
Oh, my ovaries. Suckers.
What was the probable function of Bart's behavior? Sensory, escape, attention, or tangible? Stop and think.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thumbs up. Before the acting sick behavior, Bart was presented with a test. After the acting sick behavior, Bart left the classroom and didn't have to write the test. The probable function of acting sick is escape. In this clip, we saw the ABC repeat twice because the test was presented once and he escaped, and then a second time and he escaped again and actually got to go home that time. When we see those repeated patterns, then it actually increases our confidence that we have the correct function. So we aren't usually able to figure out a function from just one example, but when we see the examples repeating and repeating, we become more confident that that pattern might be what's reinforcing the problem behavior. So thanks for playing along. Just a couple slides left for you. So you're now familiar with the 4 functions of problem behavior. And the S.E.A.T acronym. So sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So sometimes the function of problem behavior will be clear, like in the videos we just watched, but at other times it might not be. The function of a behavior cannot be determined by a single occurrence. It's those repeated ABC patterns that help us uncover a possible function. And even when there's repetition, the repetition may not be exactly the same. So it might not always be the test that's presented when Bart has that acting sick behavior. It might be asking to do the dishes at home and he acts sick and goes to the bathroom. So the antecedents might be slightly different. And if Bart is asked to do the dishes and he pretends to be sick and goes to the bathroom, and the consequence for that is that he doesn't end up having to do the dishes, then that would be a consistent ABC pattern that would support that escape function. So we're really looking for those repeated ABC patterns. Just to add a little bit to it, one behavior may serve multiple functions. So for example, if you take smoking or vaping behavior, for some people, the act of smoking and vaping is valuable because it gives them a break. An excuse, I'm going to say, to stop working or take a break from something that's long just to go do something else for a little while. And that break can function as a reinforcer. But maybe it's not about the break. Maybe it's because your besties are out on the yard, or your friends are all taking a walk together, and that friendship or the attention that you get from other people is what's actually supporting somebody's vaping behavior. Thirdly, it's talked about a lot, the physical sensations that you get from either vaping or smoking can also be extremely, we'll call, addictive. And if we look at these potential consequences, all of them could be maintaining or strengthening that smoking or vaping behavior at the same time, or it could just be one of those things, and we might have to peel apart which thing it is that's actually reinforcing that behavior. So one behavior may have multiple functions. Also, multiple forms of behavior could all have the same function or the same purpose. So take, for example, a student that needs a break from class. So I already said a student that needs a break may go out to have a vape break, but they may also go to the bathroom or walk around the halls or hide out somewhere with their phone to take a break with that. So there are different ways that people can access that break. So different forms of behavior that have that same escape or avoid function. So escaping the time in class. Because behavior and functions can be tricky, especially when I add those pieces, a functional behavior assessment should be conducted under the lead of a professional, a behavior expert, such as a board-certified behavior analyst, or other person with that education and expertise. So even to a BCBA, the function isn't always obvious. And often we will actually move on to test our guess. So at the end of what we've looked at, those ABC patterns that we're observing, we still may go on and actually manipulate the environment to see if we can get control over how people are behaving to test our theory. That kind of goes beyond the scope of what we're talking about, but that's called a functional analysis. And what our research shows us is that if we have the function correct to begin with, then it's most likely that our behavior plans will be successful. So why do we all do all this work? Well, once we understand the function of our problem behavior, so once the function of the problem behavior is revealed, we have valuable knowledge of a powerful reinforcer that already exists in that person's world. So we would use the same powerful reinforcers to teach the person to have their needs met without having to have problem behavior. How? Well, you'll have to wait until Module 4 to find that out.